noise for Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network.
Uh-oh. Yeah. It's Mercy. Music by Mercy again. Heat Nation, we the culture. Yo, E, I need you to call timeout. Need Brady to set the floor plan. Tropical blanket, open for the shot. Yo, Greg, set the pick. Still five on the floor, still ride for my dog. Still battle on the court, still survive in the war. Keep your eye on the ball, or get burned from the keep this mic off the wall without turning the cheek. From night to day, no sleeping pads or allowed to morning. The nut is sleeping us, never catch us snoring. Live from Miami, we pour in the heat with Five Reasons Sports from the courts to the streets. Yeah, Wade County, Heat Nation, we still battling.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the Five Reasons Sports Network. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
Welcome in to Five on the Floor, another one of our live specials that are getting more fun because we're actually talking about players that we're adding in. I feel like we're going to be doing a lot more of these with the fact that there's this many roster spots open. Brady Hawk here, joined by Alex Toledo. Alex here, I think, is a little bit more excited than – honestly, are you more excited today than you were when the Giannis stuff dropped? Because I know you were pretty excited earlier. I heard some things.
You heard correctly, man.
Look, the Miami Heat had the 41st pick in this draft. The guys that we talked about that are kind of the highly talented guys that were sitting there all kind of felt like they were going one after another. Like, it was like there was not a break. Like, all the top guys we were talking about was just one after another. And it was like, who's going to be left at 41 of
Except
one of these
Henri
guys?
Visar.
Wow. Yeah, that was a guy we talked about. I feel like we talked about him in our first round episode, I think, when we were going through some guys that could be there. But no, the Heat jump up to pick 37 from the Thunder, and they take their guy. I think it was interesting. We just got off a call where Adam Simon was going over some things about Ryan Conwell, who they took. And he was mentioning there was a group of players that they had about 7 guys heading into today that they felt like they were first round graded and they felt like they were going to take a look at, and they were going through the options. And he kind of hinted at the fact that a lot of them that I just mentioned were going. I mean, they were all kind of jumping off the board, that they felt like they had to jump in, and they got the okay from ownership to go make a trade up and get it done. But the Miami Heat select Ryan Conwell. We're going to get into this pick as we go, but personally just we talked about this guy a few times. I felt like every time we brought him up, we had him in the bucket with Emmanuel Sharp, who was somebody else that we were discussing that could possibly get picked. But I'll say this off the bat because this was like one of the main differences between the two. Every time we put them in the same category, but they're so different players. We talked about Sharp being like this bulky, like kind of like what is he going to be, set shooter. And I go back and I keep watching different stuff with Conwell, and it's like this guy is just so silky smooth. Like he's got this extra twitch to his game. The main thing here is the Miami Heat got their shooter. I mean, we talked about needing to fill the rest of this roster out with shooting, going into the second round, getting some type of shooter or specialist, or they didn't go for a specialist. They just went for a straight up combo guard that could do both. Because this guy shot 41% on catch and shoot threes last year. He shot 41% overall the 2 years prior in college, putting up 7 attempts a game. This past year, he put up 9.5 attempts a game. The guy could just straight up snipe. Like, he is just that good of a shooter. So we're going to get into this guy for different reasons, different parts of his game. But just number one, Alex, like the shooting factor, man. Like, how, I guess your overall thoughts, but like how quickly do you think this is going to translate? Because my personal opinion, like when I know we talk about these guys a lot and you just kind of project and you watch highlights and you see these things. I am like a legitimate believer that he is going to be able to do this at the NBA level immediately. And maybe that's putting crazy expectations, but I just think he's that talented of a dual shooter where he does the motion, he does the off the dribble, and he does the off the catch. So just what are your thoughts of him as a 3-point shooter?
Well, I mean, as you know, I was a big fan of Ryan Conwell's game, and it's somebody that we kept talking about as far as like a potential second round picks. Wasn't sure if he would make it to 41, and it seems like he wouldn't have. I mean, he wouldn't have. The report that came out afterwards, by the way, that Boston was interested in him, and that was, I guess, part of the reason why the Heat moved up. Like, just made it so much sweeter. Just a really nice cherry on top of what's been an awesome week for Heat fans. Like, first of all, most importantly, getting Conwell at 37, followed by getting Giannis. Like, just what a week.
Wow.
No,
And
but
I think Boston actually took, if you who did they end up taking? Because I think they ended up taking like a non-shooter at that, which is funny because I think it was
I don't remember right now who it was that they took.
Dylan Mitchell, who's actually
That's
somebody
right.
the Heat worked out, but it's a totally different build from what they would have
Completely
gotten in
different.
Conwell. So definitely threw off
defensive
their
wing.
timeline. Yeah.
But yeah, like the Boston thing made it all the sweeter just because it was, it's Boston and it's somebody that I had particularly wanted. And I completely agree with you. Like, I think this is somebody who, like, what he does well when it comes to the shot. Like, he put up almost 10 threes a game last year, volume wise. Like, that volume tells you about his confidence, right? And, he spoke about that a little bit as well in the Zoom call, but we know what the Heat like to do with shooters, and I understand that sometimes people might think that, like, you're putting guys in a box or whatever. I'm not trying to act like all shooters are the same and have the same skill set, but we know what they like to do. Like, we know that they like to put guys in these specialized roles and just kind of hone in on a couple of things. And I think the obvious couple of things for him is going to be the shot. Like, the Heat are going to tell him to get those shots up. He was already doing that in college, did it at a high level, specifically from three. And we know they're going to ask him to defend. And that's why I love this pick, because they were able to check off multiple boxes here. For example, a lot of the free agents that people have been pointing out, especially like some of the guys who might be on the, like on the cheaper side, there's a lot of guys who you might have questions about defensively. And I think that if you're going to be doing that, getting somebody here in the draft who still addresses the shooting, but you don't have to worry about them being like a crazy negative on defense, I think it's really important. I think he's going to be about 6'4" in shoes, just to keep that theme going from our
One last time
shows. Yep, got to keep the bit going.
Wow.
So 6'4" in shoes, 6'7" wingspan, was listed at about 215 pounds. Like, this is a guy who's going to be a sturdy defender. I just like what he's made of, man. I think he's got more to his game than that, but that is where I believe the role is going to start with him, with the Heat. He's somebody who, I think does a pretty good job relocating off the ball as well.
Yeah.
There's going to be, and shout out Digital Dell, who's in the chat, was talking with him about this on the Discord stage show, which, of course, if I mention it, I gotta shout it out here. Shout out the Off the Floor Discord server. We've gotten a big influx. We've gotten a big influx of new subscribers there, this week with all the Giannis stuff going on, and all the information is going there. The chat is popping. Everybody is reinvigorated. The rain cloud of darkness has completely subsided for Heat fans, and it feels like everybody's in a good mood over there. It's an awesome time to join. You can do a free trial and leave if you're not messing with us, but $3 a month and you get our information, you get our insights, you get the chats. It's a good time over there. So we had a Discord stage show live as the draft was going on, and we did it last night as well, but I was on there tonight, and Adele was just, one of his concerns with Conwell was the usage, because he played a high usage role in college in the different schools. And I think there is fair concern about him being able to translate into strictly a role player. For, like, I'm assuming that it's going to work because of the kind of the high volume of threes that he was already putting up, and that's what he's going to be asked to do. He was already playing defense, so I feel good about that. But I do understand the concerns if you're like comparing to another shooter who was already playing a role in college. So I understand that, but I really do like the pick here, the fact that they took him, that they traded up to keep him away from Boston, and the fact that he can be a two-way player in this league. We'll see how long it'll take him to actually play. Obviously, it's going to depend on what they do with the rest of the roster. It seems like there's multiple shooters they're targeting there. There's going to be different guys in that position group. So it's unclear when he'll be able to play, but I'm very optimistic about this pick.
Yeah, high usage guys it's always questionable how they're going to translate in the NBA. I mean, it's just always what it's going to be. The reason I'm not skeptical and I'm actually I'm optimistic about it is the thing that you mentioned there a second ago, which is the movement shooting, the relocating. Like that is something he is really good at. And he's not one of those guys like just watching you could just watch a few clips of when you see a guy that's able to move and shoot and he doesn't have to set his feet before firing. Like when you saw what Wayne Ellington used to do, what you saw what Duncan did. And I'm not comparing this guy to these guys in the Heat realm, but I mean, you want your movement shooter to be able to actually shoot on the move, like where he's catching and relocating and flying off a screen, that he's still fully in motion, carrying his momentum and still firing it. He does that all the time. And they did a lot of stuff at Louisville. Look, Louisville played a style where they would take so many threes. Like that was their game. And I like that that he already has that drilled in his mind coming off that season, because with Miami, it's going to be all about that. It's going to be all about trying to fire, getting open shots off of the gravity from other guys. So I'm interested in this. And then look, after what we just talked about with him in this Zoom call, they got a guy that is a morph of Steph Curry, Jalen Brunson, and Drew Holiday. That's what he told us. And you can aggregate.
That's not what he said.
No. I asked him about like the players that he's been watching and watching film on, and it was just a different group of players. But Drew Holiday was an interesting one because I asked Adam Simon about kind of his defense, and he said kind of the one thing that stuck out was the way he moves his feet. And if you go and watch some of his defensive film, that is a strength of his. Like he really positionally can move his feet, and but that's what makes Drew so good, though. It's like there's so many reasons what makes Drew good on that end, but it's always that he like predicts where the player is going to go, and he beats you there with his lateral quickness, like it just kind of beating the spot. Positionally, he seems pretty good. Watching some of the stuff where he would size up where it would be a bad switch, and he'd hold up in the post to try to like force you to make it over the top. He has a knack for the ball, which I think is a good thing. So there's enough there defensively that I think you could work with, but that's not his main ability. And the fact that you're able to talk about that without even getting into the other stuff is interesting. So yeah, I didn't really have a player comp before he mentioned some of those things, which those aren't my player comps, but I didn't really have a clear one. I like the fact that, look, he is a smaller guard in terms of being, 6'2" without shoes. Credit to you. But the reason why it doesn't worry me as much as some other players is like he doesn't shy away from the contact. We talked about this on other episodes. He finishes well through the help defense and length around the basket when there's a big or when he's being guarded by a wing. Like he has like this slow paced ability to his game. Like you watch like a lot of his drives and finishes are like either slow steps or they're full on just jump stops that he's stopping. Like it's not a lot of like where you see a lot of these other guys we talk about where it's just like quick movements, gets the basket and throw it up quick. That's not really him. He's kind of just plays his game at his own pace when he drives, and he has a bigger frame to me. I don't know if you agree. Like it seems like he has like a little bit of a bigger body where he can
absolutely. He weighs 215.
Fair, yeah. So it's like it seems like he's able to do that where he's able to kind of shield off a defender and finish over the top. Like there's stuff there. I don't think the stuff around the basket is going to be his number one or number two ability. I think coming in, even Kaspers, I mean, Kaspers had a certain ability to his game that was playmaking and other stuff, and they came in and said, well, you're going to just shoot threes. And the fact that they could tell this guy to do that has done that at such a high level, I think will fit in. So I'm a big fan of the pick. Just look at some of the other stuff. We're going to get into some of the undrafted guys that are coming in. I think there's only one as we speak right now that got the two-way. We'll talk about Trey Donaldson in a little bit. There's probably be some more that come in. I know this is probably the Heat's favorite time of the offseason. It's just like 10:30 p.m. to midnight after the second round. Like this is their NBA finals. So we'll see what else comes in. But I'm a big fan. You mentioned the thing. I'll ask you, I guess, what is your – because it's such a hard question to answer because I was already answering this earlier where I said it really depends on what the rest of the roster turns out to be. But I do think he can – I mean, we talked about so much like they gutted the roster. They have no playable bodies. They're going to have to just throw random guys out there. So you have a guy that could come in that played 4 years of college that seems like he's ready to play that I don't think many people would worry about throwing him out there and think it's going to be a problem. What is your confidence level, number one? And do you think this guy could be somebody in his rookie year that's playing regular rotation minutes?
I think he has the skill set for it, and the fact that he's a senior guard and the way he's built, like it doesn't seem like much of a project pick, right? And I think that definitely speaks towards his ability to play right away. And of course, the skill set need, like it's just been everything that's been put out there since the trade, before the trade, has been shooting. The Heat have been targeting multiple shooters, working on, like they kind of have names that they've been looking at for once the Giannis trade happened. And now, like, at the very least, like, I'm sure they're going to be able to pick up a guy or two there that are considered shooters, whether it's a scoring guard, like some people have talked about, and like I'm interested in, that can shoot the ball, or like guys that are just straight up like sharp shooters. Like there's a lot of options out there. I'm sure they'll end up with one or two. But just as of this point, like, I do think this is a guy who can play right away. And of course, like, a bit, right? Like, I'm not saying this is going to be like a 25-minute per game type of player right away, nothing like that. But it is it's a change of pace from the guards that they currently have on the roster. Like, they traded away Tyler. The Norm thing doesn't seem like it's something that's going to be, I don't think we're getting a repeat of Norm here. Like, I don't, especially with just like the way that their financial situation is, they're hard capped at the first apron since they took back so much money in the Giannis deal. They cannot get past that $209 million number, no matter what, right? Like, the veteran minimum is like an option to get past, cap space. Like, you don't need cap space to sign a veteran minimum, right? You can sign guys with no cap space if you have their bird right. So there's like exceptions, right? They're the mid-level exception. All these things let you get past cap space to sign. But no matter what, all of these things, like, you can't use any of them to get past the first apron at this point. They are 100% hard cap there, no matter what. So they have to fill out a roster and be precise with the way they do it. Of course, there's trades that they can make to offload money. That's why Jovic has been talked about a lot. But as of this point, I think it's great that they got a guy who can shoot and defend with decent size for a guard, sturdy, who is going, like, these second round picks are so much more flexible contract wise than the first round picks. There's no like specific amount of money like that is like mandated the way that it is with the first round picks. There's going to be some flexibility there with how they decide to structure the contracts. There's even, like, technically he's eligible for a two-way. I'm sure he's just going to get a standard, but yeah, like, these second round contracts, I think it's a great pickup there. I think it's awesome value. I honestly don't think it's crazy to say that he had the talent to go late first, especially with the amount of guys that dropped out in the late first and early second range. I think, like, if you compare him to, I don't know, like, even like some of the guys that went earlier in the second round, like Malik Thomas and Isaiah Evans, like, I think I had him below those guys, but kind of right there with those guys. I was very interested in him. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, it seems like they did too. We're always going to hear that from them. We're always going to hear, but that's how it goes. Like, usually you like a guy, so you're probably going to have him higher than the consensus a lot of times. Yeah. And I think 37 isn't even a reach at all for him. I think that's right about kind of where he was. This wasn't a reach. And so, all that being said, like, I think this is somebody who, as my computer falls here, depending on what happens with the rest of the roster, I do think there's a path for him to play. I do. Like, Drew Smith and Davion, those guys play different games here. They're defensive specialists. Davion obviously took a jump offensively over the past couple of seasons with the Heat. But Conwell, who's going to be a shooter, a guy who's focused on shooting, focused on defense as well. It's a nice change of pace from what they currently have on the roster, and a skill set that they frankly need.
This comment came through before. They said, we're going to need a guy who can dribble the ball. We have like 3 guys who could dribble. And the reason why I think it's interesting is that's an important ability for him, because it is a true factor, because it's talked about, it's looked at, okay, we need spot up shooting because we have Giannis, and Giannis can have the ball in the middle of the floor and he's going to have to kick the shooters. But it's not all it is. You still need creation in the guard room. You still need these other factors. So, like, I
love that because he's not a standstill shooter.
That's exactly what I'm saying. I don't think they should or are going to put him in a box, like, sort of like they did Kasper's. I don't see that being the case here, because I think there's going to be a need for him to come out at times and do what he does off the dribble, because he's a smooth off the dribble player. Like, I know the efficiency wasn't at the level with the pull-up shooting as it was with the catch and shoot, which is always going to be the case. That's the case with everybody. But the stuff where he's able to go into these step backs and he's able to create, he has the ability to take some of these mid ranges when he's kind of coming off a screen, but he usually doesn't. He's usually coming off a high pick and roll and he's taking pull up, regular threes, and he's doing this different stuff. So he has legit like wiggle to his game off the dribble. It's why it's important that I thought it was crucial that the games that he played without Mikal Brown is helpful. Like that's helpful for this time. His efficiency was a lot better when he played with him, which is always going to be the case as well. I mean, you're going to get better looks. That's going to be the case when he's playing with Miami and playing with Giannis or Bam. But I think getting those reps and being able to do that is important because there's other guys in this draft. There's other guys in the second round range that don't have that off the dribble ability that he has, that he showcased, that he can tap into. So he's a dual threat. He's a combo guard that can hit both layers, and it might not always be about the catch and shoot. It's going to be about the other stuff that he can grow into. I guess
real quick, somebody mentioned him. Somebody mentioned Kendrick Nunn as a comp for him. They said Kendrick Nunn on steroids. There's something there. Like I kind of see on offense, like there's some similarities, and but defensively, I think he's far and away better than what Kendrick Nunn was.
And I would just say stronger, more big, like different ability around the basket than Nunn. But I think in terms of I fall into this too. Like anytime I see a lefty shooter, I just want to compare him to a lefty. It just makes me more comfortable. That's why right when I saw Jalen Brunson and Nunn and these guys, it's like that just makes sense to me. I'm gonna compare him to Zoran Dragic in a minute. Let's give a quick shout out to Prize Picks before we continue with this episode. We're gonna get into some of the undrafted guys, but make sure you guys are hopping on here. Okay, we are a couple months away from taking the more on Giannis's 33.5 points for the Miami Heat. I know I'll be taking that more on opening day. It's going to be a fun time jumping on here and seeing these different props, seeing Giannis in a Heat jersey on here. So, but don't wait until October. Let's jump in now. Jump on a Prize Pick, use code 5, and get in on the action for World Cup and MLB. All right, just quickly, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if anything's popped up since we've been on here, but I still think usually these names start flying for Miami. Usually Miami's I feel like the name that gets brought up the most with these undrafted guys. But Trey Donaldson's the one that ends up getting a 2-way contract. Let me just say up front, me and Alex were talking about this before. I mean, these guys that are getting 2-ways might not be on 2-ways by the opening day. They may not be on 2-ways by training camp. They're going to swap these guys in and out, especially with the uniqueness of this roster where they're booked with their entire roster. And it's like, okay, well, let me figure out which 3 guys to put on 2-ways. No, like they have roster spots to fill. So it's going to be a swap. They're going to figure out what these guys, but when I was thinking of we talked about this too. We talked about this of if they got Giannis, the point guards, like the older under control point guards that they would go after and take undrafted. And I probably should have said this guy first because number one, he worked out with Miami. Number 2, he's in their backyard and they saw him play a ton of times, driving up the street. But Trey Donaldson's like one of those players that honestly fits Miami to me just because he's an under control point guard. He's a playmaker. The key word is under control. Like I'm not going to overdo that word because they don't want these out of control point guards that come in. And I hate to compare it to like the guys that don't work out on other teams when they come in, like whether it was RJ Hampton or you could go down the line of those type of guys. Even like Josh Christopher was kind of a 2 guard that was playing his way. But I feel like they want these like Drew Smith builds that are going to come in on a good team. And just, if we have to throw you in off the bench, we know you could settle us. Like Trey Donaldson could come in. He's been in real college systems. He's been able to play into the half court. He can get off the ball and put the ball in the hands of these other guys. So, and he has some scoring ability. So I don't hate this pickup. I mean, just for now, seeing the way, I know you said to me earlier, it's going to be a good opportunity for him to compete because he's going to be competing with a bunch of guys. It's not just going to be like him just, being from Miami and the Canes and he's just going to walk into a 2-way contract with Miami. Like, no, it's going to be a bit of a battle in camp to see who ends up shaking out here. But I don't think this is it either. I don't think this is it. Like, of course this isn't it, but I don't think it's it with this build. I think you're going to see maybe 1 or 2 more point guards that are going to come in here with similar styles of being set up other guy point guards that they're going to take a look at and compete with him, but it's a good start to kind of get him in the building. Just what are your general thoughts?
I won't say too much about him just because I didn't watch a ton of Trey Donaldson. I'm not like, I obviously I'm from Miami, but I've never been like a UM guy, so I'm not gonna LARP and act like I
Wow.
watched a ton of UM. I don't root against them, but I'm not like a UM super fan, so I didn't see like a ton of UM basketball, but I did see a little bit of Donaldson, and I think you did a great job describing his game. He's just like an under control point guard who does multiple things. The Heat, Adam Simon spoke after the draft, and they kept citing his competitiveness, and like that's a huge one for the Heat. That's usually like one of their biggest indicators when it comes to like who they're going to draft. They love to talk about that with guys, and it was funny seeing him go live on Instagram after he got taken. Seems like he was excited to be able to stay in South Florida. But yeah, like he comes in just to give some of the keep the bit going here, right? He's going to be about 6'1.5" in shoes. I'm sorry. Yeah, I think 6'1.5" in shoes, 6'4" wingspan, 200 pounds. Average 16 points, about 6 assists, 4 rebounds, a steal and a half. Shot 36% from 3. And yeah, like I think the point you brought up was a fantastic one when it comes to comparing him to some of these other guys they've had in the program in the past that were these like highly touted recruits that didn't work out elsewhere and kind of need the ball in their hands and maybe somewhat erratic, not able to play their game, like trying to downsize their game into a smaller role was a little bit clunky. And I think Donaldson being somebody who can just kind of settle things, as you said, should be able to set him apart. And apparently it did, considering that he's the only one that's been named so far undrafted. I've been keeping my eye out to see if anybody else gets picked up. But Leif, I am surprised
they haven't grabbed a big yet. I know I was pushing it before. I felt like early on, I felt like the first thing they were going to do when the draft ended was grab one of their favorite bigs that fell undrafted and get them on a two-way. I still think they're going to. I still think probably the next hour they're going to take a big. But I'm surprised we haven't seen that yet.
Leif did mention a little while ago on Discord and confirmed it on Twitter as well that they're interested in Houston guard Milos Uzan. And from what I can tell, he is one of those like classic Heat undrafted guards were like very much known for his defense. Digital Adele and Matt Hannafan were on our Discord, and neither one seemed to be big fans of that idea, but both did credit his defense. So kind of tells you what type of player more or less he is, or at least kind of like what the base is when it comes to the strengths, right, and the vision there. I don't know much else about him, but that's apparently somebody that they're targeting. As far as the bigs, that's what I've had my eye on that ever since the Conwell pick, because there were so many guys in that second round kind of undrafted pool of bigs there, and they're all pretty solid. And a bunch of them went off the board there in the second round, but the draft ended, and Rafael Castro was still on the board, and I thought he was going to get drafted. That's somebody that I would absolutely be looking at if I were them. Just a nice big man prospect who I absolutely thought was draftable. And going back to the UM theme, I shouted this guy out on some of our live streams there, but Ernest Ude, I thought is somebody who could go undrafted, and I thought they would like, just because he's one of these like, strong, mobile, athletic bigs who seems like they can play, like who can really like, I think star in some defensive coverages there, as far as like the way that they like to do things, like, whether it's switching or playing at the level or hedging. Like I feel like that's somebody that you can plug into a lot of different things, and I feel like that's either one of those guys I think would be great value undrafted. They also worked out Malik Renault from UM, another big who I know, Digital Adele. And again, I keep mentioning him because I want to shout him out because him and Matt did so much work throughout the year. They watch full games. Like we try to catch up and do our best, but I always want to give them credit, and he really likes Renault. So those are some guys that I'd be watching for. But actually, Castro already got signed. So let me just I should have said that originally. Castro ended up with the Bucks, our old friends over there. So you know what? Go ahead. I won't be too mad at that. We took we took Giannis off their hands. I guess they can have Rafael Castro. But yeah, I'd be looking at those bigs right now.
For sure. Like I said, I really do think that. I mean, look, if they didn't get Bobby Portis, and I keep mentioning his name, but if they didn't get Portis back, in all seriousness, in the deal, maybe they take a big in that second round. And I know for a fact they would have gotten any of those guys that fell in draft. Like there would have been an even bigger push to go get that guy. I think they feel a little bit more comfortable with the fact that they actually have a backup big on the roster.
And Jovic is still here too.
And Jovic is here too. So the front court's a little bit figured out. But no, they still need some depth at that position. They still need another big. And like I said, there's still some floating around. Like there's still some big. So like maybe they don't have to jump on it immediately. But I do think having a just some type of rebounder, defender, lob threat that's hanging around to just get on a two-way contract. That's kind of what I would expect probably by tomorrow. Here's the thing too, because look, they used to be able to do this where they would just get random specialists at this time of the night. But like, I feel like that's kind of, is there
Speaking
some
of
news?
No. It's just you completely reminded me of something that we probably should have said. You talk about specialists. They reportedly really liked, according to Leif, Donovan Atwell, who is a sharpshooter, like classic, like sniper guy. You know, I'm not sure that he's been picked up yet, but Leif has mentioned him a couple of times. So that's another guy I think to watch out for. But what were you saying?
It's to that point. If you want to get a specialist, you usually have to jump on it early because they're usually gone. Like you're not going to be able to sit around. Like usually the bigs, you can kind of, there's a bunch of options. The trusty old point guards like Trey Donaldson are hanging around, but usually there's just not like this long list of specialists that are hanging around. Like I won't say lucky because they did their due diligence on these guys, but they got bailed out by finding those guys and it working out because it's such a hard position to really nail. So I don't think it's like a situation like we say they need shooting and it's like, okay, they just fill up. That's an interesting name because I know Greg pinned that one a while back. Like he mentioned that name a while back. So that is definitely one to keep an eye on. I'm down. Any shooter you could grab and you could put on a two-way or Exhibit 10, go ahead. But it's just tough. I think the second round pick nailing down on a shooter, I think was so important. I think they had to do it. And now what we're going to see is just going and getting the veteran shooters, just going and getting all these guys on the market that you're going to jump in. I don't think it's going to be about the youngins. What happened now?
I'm just laughing at this comment. Conwell can play 4 of the 5. Trust
that's the 2025 Heat. That's us in the past. Okay, this is a Giannis era. We were running Bobby Portis at the 3 and Nikola Jovic at the 2. This is a positionally sized team. This is a new era. But no, yeah. My final thoughts here before we end this. I know we were waiting to see if other stuff came through, but I am personally a big. I know you were beforehand, but I'm a big fan of this pick. I really am. I just see the upside of. Look, here's the biggest thing to me is I was watching his shooting and I'm like, this guy is polished in terms of having a quick release and he has great footwork. If you watch him as a shooter of like just 1-2 and just firing, he has great mechanics. And I'm like, I just remember so many of these drafts where we'd walk away or beforehand where we would talk about guys or afterward we would evaluate guys and it's like, well, Jaime's jumper is a little weird. Like it needs to be quickened or but we'll see what Pella's jumper ends up being. It's always been about like, well, let's get them in the building and throw them with, the shooting coaches and everything and develop it. I said this on so many episodes. I just wanted to get a guy that could shoot the ball, like that has that ability built in him. That is just a straight up shooter that doesn't need this extra stuff.
Here we go. This is another reason why you guys should be signed up to our Discord. By the way, we put all the Adam Simon and Ryan Conwell quotes on there, but I just saw that Leif said that it sounds like the Heat lost Donovan Atwell to Detroit, which is funny because the Pistons have been so entrenched with like the Heat rumors since last week,
they're
and they still are. Yeah, apparently they just like any shooter that the Heat like, right? Where like they're interested in Powell, they're interested in Hero. They just took this, sniper that the Heat that the Heat were targeting undrafted. But the good news is, Leif said that he's hearing that Keyshawn Hall from Auburn will be signed to the Heat Summer League, and that's somebody that I thought could have got drafted second round. This is not a sharpshooter. It's kind of like a scoring wing, who I think has some upside there. I think if you look him up, he's somebody that might catch the attention of some Heat fans. Yeah, he's an older player, but he's got an interesting package of skills for for his size, and I think it's somebody who, by the way, shout out Digital Adele again. He's been on Keyshawn Hall since like last year, and yeah. So there you go. There's some bad news mixed with the good news, but all this information is going first to Discord. All the quotes are on there. All the different people from our network all kind of interacting with each other on host updates, and then the chat is also popping. So once again, shout that out. The Discord server in the description, along with our articles for Sports Illustrated, if you guys want to check that out.
I also want to mention, I mentioned the names that he mentioned that I'm talking about Conwell that he watched, and I mentioned Holiday, Steph, and Brunson. The fourth name I thought was interesting just because it was a different type of name. And also I was talking about the comparison that I like comparing lefties to lefties. AJ Mitchell was an interesting one. Like, and they don't play the same. I'm not saying that they have similar styles, but the fact that he's taking things from him, I see the vision with what he's probably watching, where it's like this more so the stuff inside the arc, especially where it's like using his body to his advantage and then getting to his spots, the finishing where AJ Mitchell is as I was describing earlier with his finishing, like AJ Mitchell's kind of the more methodical, slow down, finish over the top of you, kind of assess the defense instead of just using quickness. Like I honestly, I like that comp. I like when players honestly like watch like specific abilities and watch random players instead of just like watching like the top 3 players that you would expect. Like when it's like mentioning, who do you watch as a shooter, and it's watching old Klay Thompson, or it's like mentioning these like obvious ones. Like when they're like locking down on like specific abilities, I always feel like that's interesting. So AJ Mitchell was an interesting comp. But no, I'm a fan.
What do you think about this comp here from our regular commenter, Do Lopez, who likes to troll me? Said, I think Conwell could be a Deuce McBride type. What do you think about that?
He doesn't have the lift, I feel like, a McBride, but the quick fire.
Nobody does.
Yeah, nobody does. But like the quick fire, I guess I could see it.
Maybe the roll.
And I guess the ability to do it on and off the ball, like there's not a ton of like combo guards, like combo role player guards that do it off the dribble and off the catch similarly, like where it's like almost 50-50. And I feel like McBride might be, and I feel like Conwell is. So that's the one, I guess, comparison I could make between the two. I mean, look, if you're drafting McBride in the second round on a team that needs some scoring, that needs some shooting, that needs some guard play, I mean, I'll take that any day of the week. So I'm excited to see what it looks like in the NBA level. I'm excited. Honestly, I was wondering because, when you trade all your young guys for a star player, I was like wondering what Summer League was going to look like. I'm excited to see this guy in Summer League. I am. I'm excited to see. It's not always about the regular roster. Like getting a guy like Trey Donaldson, they're going to get some other guys that'll run the show in Summer League and be able to set Conwell up and be able to do stuff and give him the green light. I think he's going to be a really fun player to watch in that environment, just to kind of let loose and just play his game. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to see how the rest of this roster shakes out with the Exhibit 10s and the two ways. Do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to give a shout out here to our guy, Saucy Takes. I believe that's Lou. That's Coach Lou from Heat Beat. Makes sense, too, because he is on top of it when it comes to the draft. So shout out to him. He mentions here that Conwell took 17 threes per 100 possessions, which would have been second in the NBA ahead of Steph Curry. That is an insane stat, bro. Like, obviously, that's not like directly translatable, but it's great to give the perspective for just how much of a high volume shooter he is, even despite like everything that we've been talking about with the rest of the stuff he has as an offensive player.
And he played, like I said earlier, he played in that Louisville system that was like just pure, just taking threes. But I said this before, like, not just like I wanted a guy that has a green light, like on a roster like this. Like I remember, like a good example was like Swain that we talked about in the first round. We both liked his game, but it's like, do you want to get a guy that you're like have to, enforce like being the scoring ability and having the green light and trying to be aggressive? Like I'm kind of over that whole idea, especially on a team that needs offense. I want a guy that just be able to go out there and just go shoot, like just go try and score, just go put the ball up. So the fact that, I mean, he's taking 9.6 threes a game in his senior year, like this year with Louisville, like that's a lot of threes to be putting up. And I know the number 35% like doesn't like scream like crazy, like, but like he shot 41% each of the years before. 35% is still pretty good for shooting 9.6 attempts a game. But the level of difficulty on those shots, if you go back and watch them, is so much different than a lot of these other shooters that may be in this draft, like that you go watch. Like, go watch the degree of difficulty of the shots he's taking, where he's having to fly off a screen into the corner and having to catch quick and fire over a contest, or he's taking a between the legs step back three on the wing. Like, he's taking tough threes, and he was able to do it at a high level. So I'm excited.
I have one more thing. I know you've been trying to end it for like 5 minutes here, so sorry about that. But you know what?
Don't apologize to me. I could be here all night. Apologize to Ethan, because he's going to see
I'm not
Ryan
apologizing
Conwell.
to Ethan.
Yeah, Knicks won the championship and he ran to New York. He knew that he weren't going to have a first round pick, and he just wanted to go up there to celebrate. He wanted to hang out with the New York Knicks fans. So let's just put that out there as well.
Not going to apologize to Ethan. I know the people like our longer shows. So I think I think he should be happy that it's not him on these longer shows. I think that's.
I also want to know if this gets back to us, if he actually is going to listen to the 41st minute of the Ryan Conwell episode. I'm just curious. I want to see if this gets back.
Take the less on Prize Picks for that. I take the less on about 20 minutes, I would say. But other than that, I did want to say, like, I know this is like real like basketball junkie nerd stuff, but this like I know I was talking about it earlier, but the second round stuff with how like the second round and undrafted players with how flexible their contracts are, this two-way situation is going to be a little interesting. I know we hinted at it earlier, but like Keshad currently is not on the roster. Jameer, they have a guarantee date on him. I don't have that date in front of me, but there's only going to be like a few roster spots available. If you're counting for pick 41, you're accounting for Wiggins, who sounds like he's going to be back, whether it's an opt-in or a restructured contract. If you're counting Thanasis, which it sounds like we might have to, all of a sudden you've got like 3 or 4 roster spots left without looking at it. I think it's 4. So those standard deals are going to be real important. You know, like, is Jameer going to be back on a standard deal? Is Keshad going to be back on a standard deal? I'm sure they still have two-way eligibility. They just gave a two-way to Donaldson. You know, I mean, I'm sorry. I just realized I said pick 41 earlier when I could have just said Ryan Conwell or pick 37. So that was stupid of me. But either way, they have so few roster spots left available. And there's going to be, I think, serious competition with the two-way stuff, because Trevor Keels, speaking of shooting, man, that guy hit 12 threes in a G-League game last year. Even if you want to call that fluky, like, he's probably not going to hit 12 threes in a game ever again. Obviously, that shows some shooting ability. I'd be
something to keep around.
Yeah, like, if you need shooters, guy on a two-way right there, all of a sudden, like, you got one there. Don't expect Vlad Golden to be back. Nice guy, but wasn't even able to get on the court when they were down bigs. They were playing Keshad at the 5. They were playing Jovic at the 5. So I'm not expecting him to be back. I'm expecting him to be replaced by a big. Guy. He is. He seems like a super nice guy. He really does. He just, you know, I don't ever want to sound like I'm trashing guys or calling them scrubs, but it just is what it is. Like, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. It just doesn't seem like an NBA player. It doesn't seem like he's been evaluated that way by the organization. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Keshad and Jameer, what happens with Keels, what happens with Donaldson. And somebody mentioned in the comments as well, like, there's also the guys who they pick up from other summer league teams that they were impressed by. Like, you know, that's another thing. So there's only 3 of those spots, those two-way spots. There's going to be, I believe, 4 roster spots. And it's going to be interesting to see who gets them.
And that's before we get into, like, how many guys have been rumored of these veteran shooters that are they're going to get a couple of them. Like, there's just too many options that they're going to get some of these veteran minimum shooters that we'll see who ends up being. But, like, yeah, you're going to prioritize that part of the roster. So that's what it's going to come down to, is, like, could we talked about this before? Like, could, like, guys like Jameer or Keshad, like, going from a standard back to a two-way, like, what does that look like? Like, what is that ability? And if they're filling up let's say both of them are filling up two-way spots, how do you prioritize the final two-way? Like, I'm just like, there's just different ways.
Keels is still there,
and Keels is still there, which that's where it all gets a little weird. It comes down to the talent evaluation of this summer. But look, this is a good problem to have. Like, I'm having fun right now. Like, the fact that we're discussing this problem, because we had problems a couple of weeks ago that were much larger than the problems that we're talking about with Trevor Keels versus Jameer Young for the final two-way. So I'll take this, but no, but seriously though, I think that is, like, it is important. I think, and this is what they've been good at. I mean, they've been good at trying to find this. The point you just made a second ago, I 100% agree with. I would not be surprised at all if they stole a player in summer league from like another team that they saw and got him in there like that for sure. Shooting wise, like they did it with Swider with the Lakers, like when they just spotted him in summer league and they ended up getting like I could see them doing that for sure.
Maybe
because
they still get Atwell.
Maybe because it's not like I said earlier, it's not easy to get these specialists like right when the draft ends because they're so limited. So like when you get them into summer league and you get to see them their actual styles and there's a bunch of players out there, I feel like that's when it's easier to actually get those guys. And there's like an actual I don't know if this matters for summer league and feeling two ways, but there's an intrigue around this team right now. Like there's an ability here that everybody knows this team needs shooting. Everybody knows what this team's about. That a lot of these guys are just trying to get any contract. They don't care where it is, but there is an intrigue and an ability that these agents push these players to come here. Like they especially now with the situation, but even more so, they know when there's roster spots open to get their guy in this building and try to see if they could develop them into a contract. So I'm curious to see if any other names pop up tonight with different builds. Like I said, I think the bigs is going to be interesting. I expect more than the two-way. I think there's just going to be a bunch of Exhibit 10s that are going to start popping in overnight that they're going to try to – they always get those early where they just start spamming those. So we'll see who those guys end up being. I think that pretty much does it for us tonight. I said this like 8 times when I tried to close this episode out. I'm a big fan of the Ryan Conwell pick. I'm excited to see him in summer league. We'll see if he shakes out and makes things into the rotation. Look, as much as this team is a veteran team now and they don't have a lot of young guys, we needed a young guy to cling on to, like where we have some hope for some upside because we don't have a lot of that going on right now. This team's going to be a lot older than we're used to. So Ryan Conwell and Pelle Larsson and Nikola Jovic, we're going to need you to lead us.
Oh my gosh, that's so crazy. Their young core all of a sudden.
That's their young core.
That's their young core.
That's their young core, man. That's our big three. And look, they all three.
Now, I don't know what's going to happen with Jovic.
We'll see. And I'm not going to get into that whole conversation right now in this episode, but I seriously, when you just said that name, it's like if he is around, he's a legit like end of rotation X factor for this team. Like
for sure.
If you could legitimately get him back on track and get him back scoring wise, out of his head with the shooting and everything, and just back to a functional player again with the new style of offense they're going to run. That's a great player to have in the rotation. Like he's playing, like he is in the regular rotation if you could get that back. So if he's still hanging around, they invested in him with a contract and they're going to have to invest in him again with trying to stick this out and see what they can do in putting him in the right spot. Because up to this point, they've had so many players on the roster that they haven't been able to put him in a specific spot and role, where maybe in a situation like this, they're going to have to say, we need you here. Like we can't just not prioritize you and just throw you out there and hope something happens because you're a player that works better off of structure of playing a certain role. And look, can I say this though? Because we always talk about point Nico and we were like, it got to a point last year where it was like, okay, Norm needed the ball. Tyler needed the ball. Wiggs was going to get reps and we go down the line. Usage is kind of opening up. Yes, there's Giannis, but like usage is seriously all across the board where they're going to need some guys to do different things. Maybe the outlets of salvaging, as said, is right here. Jovic is by putting the ball in his hands and seeing what he could do as a playmaker. And I used the word positional size earlier. Maybe if you can lead into the playmaking thing, as we talked about earlier in his career and a couple of years ago, that was fun when I felt like he was always most confident with the ball in his hands. Maybe that's how you get him back to a certain level.
It's going to be interesting, man. I do think he's salvageable. I agree. We've seen him be good in the past. Just can't. It's just a little bit. Sometimes it's tough to project because he was just like, love the guy, cool guy, all that. I've seen him be good multiple seasons in the past, but he was not good last year. He was just straight up their worst rotation player. And I'm just
I think I was lower on Jaime the year prior than I am now on Nico. And the fact that Jaime was able to bounce back from where he was at, and I'll say that, like, I didn't think he would be able to get back to the level that he ended up getting to. And it's a big credit to him and the work he put in, the improvements that he made. But I think I was lower on Jaime at the time than I am on Nico right now. I seriously, I think there is an ability and a role. There's an outlet for him getting back to that level. And
I think so too. They could use his skill set, and I think he's going to have openings with the attention that Giannis is going to demand. It's just interesting because since the $16 million contract extension kicks in this year, and again going back to the first apron hard cap, that is just like sticking out when you look at that payroll. You know, it sticks out as like the guy, the obvious guy that could be moved. And look, people have been talking about maybe they were going to attach their second round pick. They didn't do that, obviously. I'm glad they didn't. I didn't want them to do that. I think that this was a type of pick where you can get a contributor on a cost control contract, and I think they nailed that. And also, they didn't have to trade a future second to move up, because there's so little left when it comes to their assets, like tradable assets, I should say, because of the Stepien rule and all that. They don't have any more first to trade. They have a conditional first in 2029, which is based on like the one that they owe to Charlotte next year, going to Charlotte next year, right? If it doesn't roll over to 2028, then they can trade that 2029 pick conditionally. They have a pick swap, I believe, that they can trade, and they have a second round pick that's like OKC's or something. It's not going to be super valuable, obviously. That's what they have left, right, when it comes to those assets. So not trading one of those to move up, I thought was a huge win, especially for the player, especially that you kept them away from Boston. You know, I don't know how much of those cash considerations they sent, but I thought that was a pretty damn good deal, considering now, like, if you do want to attach something to Jovic, whether or not, like, you think that's a good idea, it's still possible. Like, you still got some stuff there. But I do agree. Like, I think there is absolutely a world where Nico is a useful rotation player for them. I just keep feeling like he's that guy that gets moved. I keep coming back to it, like, especially at the beginning of these builds for them in the past. There's always, like, when the roster first comes together, you know, after they acquire the big name player, there's usually like a big move or two to kind of reshape the roster, and Jovic just feels like an obvious one there. But here we go again, like you and me, 50 minutes. Sorry, Ethan, but and sorry to you too, because I'm pretty much the one extending it over and over again. It's just these thoughts keep coming into my head, and there's just so much to talk about. But you know, we got a whole summer.
I'm the one who brought up Nikola Jovic on the Ryan Conwell episode, so that's on me. I'll say this though, like the way that Kalel's gone, so if Nico is still here, like he's the guy that's gonna get piled on now. Like I say that in the way of like who Spo is gonna have to like go at and push and do all that stuff. It's going to be Nico. Because I'm looking around and I'm not seeing anybody else. Is he gonna be like yelling at Bobby Portis like no, like it's gonna be no, you would never yell at Bobby Portis. Bobby Portis doesn't do anything. He should. No, but seriously, I do look at it like that, where he is the X factor of kind of reviving this. But this all started with us saying that the Miami Heat's young core right now is Pelle Larsson, Nikola Jovic, and Ryan Conwell. And they have the ability to take some of these rookies over the next few years that they can build out this young core a little bit more. But for now, that's who they've got. And now the rest of the roster is going to be moving deck chairs in the two ways, and it's going to be about finding some shooters. And we're going to do a lot more episodes on that. I'm excited to see what shooters they end up bringing in and what offensive options they bring in, because, look, that could be that's the next – I feel like their floor, we know where this team's floor is going to be at in the Eastern Conference about right now. These next few moves, I think, this is altering their ceiling. Like, this is where they can ultimately get to with whatever offensive options, whatever guards, whatever shooters they bring in over the next month or two. I really believe that's like what's changing the ceiling of this team and of their offense. So we'll see how that shakes out. We'll see if Ryan Conwell ends up in the rotation. But thank you guys for joining. Thank you for bearing with us for an hour. We'll be back this week with a ton more Giannis episodes. And then a couple more, Summer League episodes heading up to that. Thank you for listening.